Good evening. It is Duke Stefan here. We're doing another quick fight review, and we're going to break a couple of things down and look at some opportunities so that we can find ways to get better at fighting. So let's have a look at this. So this is a fight between myself on the left and Master Ianto on the right. Master Ianto and I and His Majesty, current King, were able to get out and have a bit of a session on Sunday. And we're just going to look at one particular fight between myself and Ianto. We're constantly looking back at these videos to find opportunities to get better, things that we can find to improve in our fighting. So pretty much any time that we die, there is an opportunity for us to improve something, and that's something that's been really driven home in a review process in the way that we do things on an online session with His Royal Highness, the current Crown Prince of Antia, Octa Masades, and Sir Helgi. And working with those guys online has been tremendous. And so picking up this opportunity that we've got so much video to really go back and look at how we're fighting to see what we can improve. So without further ado, we're going to look at this from 34 seconds through to about 1:04. So it's about 30 seconds of video. It's one interaction. So we'll have a look. So we'll just watch it through first. So we're just sizing each other up. Thrust out to try and see what he's going to do. Quick recover out of a shot there to take his leg. Now stepping in here, staying at range. A cheeky thrust to see what I can get. And straight over the top. So that's it. That's the fight. 30 seconds. Doesn't take long. So it's one of the things about our fights that are pretty interesting, that they're over so quick. So there's two things that I was looking at when I found this moment and looking at, how did I get the leg shot? And why did he die? And were there any opportunities that he could have killed me? Because that's what I'm really interested in, looking for flaws in my own fighting. And there's a couple of things that we've come across on both of those. So what I'm going to do is just let this play back through. The entry's all fine. Now, interestingly, you'll see I've got a pretty good posture here. Ian's got a pretty good posture, but he has this slight forward lean in his upper body. So that in itself is affecting his lines to throw shots. So it's something that I've not really put a pin on before. I've just sort of really noticed at this time that although he seems quite straight up and down, if you look, his chest is leaning forward just a bit. But if you look at my spine, I'm actually leaning back a little bit. So I'm actually giving myself a little bit of extra space in that opening moment. So my shield's in a position where, it's playing with the range, but I'm actually set just a little bit back from it and just resting into my stance, whereas Ian's kind of forward in his. I'm not saying that either of those is wrong. It's just something to be aware of, because the closer you put yourself to your opponent, the more opportunity they have to find space. So we come in, cheeky thrust, and let's just step through this frame by frame. Ianto takes a retreat. I've kept my ground. So we might play this back at quarter speed. Let's just go play back at quarter speed, so we can just play it. And I'll just mute this as well so we don't have that horrible noise. All right, so we're at 38, still a little bit of sizing up. And throw a thrust in to try and get some kind of action out of him. He's moved back, I move back. He's just coming straight forward on a nice linear line for me, which is good. Now, at this point, he's thrown a shot. At my head. So a nice rollover snap. But look at the line of his wrist. So rather than pulling that shot out and keeping it flat, he's actually pulled it down, which means that it's never going to get over the top of that shield. So the hand kind of curves under. So he actually needs to keep that and even possibly lift the hand to get it up and over the shield. So there's one opportunity there for him in throwing that shot. But he's thrown that from a really, you know, a range that's really not going to take advantage of it. So unless it's a setup shot, it's kind of a wasted shot because at this point, his sword has too far to travel from down in front of his head. It's going to have to go up to clear his head. So it's got to come up to clear to throw that snap. Whereas if the sword was already above his head, he could whip it straight out and snap me faster because it doesn't have to travel up, or it's not going to have that extra distance to travel. So if you threw the snap straight from in front, your tip's still got to roll up over to clear your own head. So little things that can make a difference. I tend to have my sword above my head so that I can throw that shot out there. But yeah, so we can see that. Throws that shot. I've overblocked. So this is a really, really good thing for me to note is my shield has, 4 corners. I could have blocked that simply by doing this and been covered, but instead I've pushed up and high. So I've big opportunity for me to fix that. I'm pointing at the screen, you can't see that. But if you look at this, I've plated the shield, pushed this up, the whole elbow up. I didn't need to push the whole elbow up. I could have just popped this shoulder up and pulled that forward. That would have covered me. Did not need to go anywhere as far as I did. And look at the result. If he had whipped down fast, he could have come underneath that shield, possibly got the body. But this is the first thing that I noticed, and I take the leg at this point because he's on the retreat. And this was the first thing I noticed. He has come in, he's thrown the snap, missed the snap, seen me coming and decided to retreat. If it was inevitable that that leg shot was going to land, there is a big opportunity for Yento here where he throws this shot and instead of retreating at this point, so we can see his foot here, this foot is beautifully angled over this side. If he had, rather than stepped back and kept going back, if he had pushed out to the side here and come out this way, look at how exposed all of this is on me. So just, right, so at this point here, boom. Now, problem is, foot's off the ground here. He's rolling on that toe. At that point, he could have pressed into that and pushed forward again, come down on my offside. May have caught the arm, may have caught the head. Either one would have been a good shot for him to take. But because he has come in, thrown that shot and retreated, rather than holding his ground, or rather than pushing out towards my sword side and keeping the advantage that he's won with the range, even if I brought us into that range, it doesn't really matter. The fact is that we are in a great range for him to be able to strike me. But rather than continue to try and attack, he has decided to retreat. And that has led to him losing his leg and me not losing an advantage at all because everything about him is moving backwards. So a really important little moment there is it's really common that we see fighters come in, take a shot and step out. And it's something that you might see a lot of the top end fighters do, where we'll come in and we might do what's called shotgunning, where we'll just throw a single shot. You might see that and then I'm popping out. The big difference is there's a lot more nuance that we're seeing in that moment that might be causing us to need to retreat. The speed and accuracy of the people that we're fighting at this top level, it warrants sometimes that retreat, but often it's a habit that gets developed in us as fighters where we'll throw a shot and back out when really we shouldn't be backing out. And so that's something to be really conscious of. And I think there's a massive opportunity here that Ianto could have come in, held his ground, and possibly even stepped left. But even if he hadn't have stepped, he could have just rolled straight over into that offside. And there was a massive opportunity there. I was so open. So from there, throw that shot. And if he just rolled over and took that step to the left, instead of retreating back there, big opportunity to come down because I had overblocked that shot so far. And if you look at where the line of my shield is, this hole, like he could have just even snapped down past the side of the shield and probably landed on this shoulder had he decided to come forward. So it is sometimes counterintuitive. Our natural human reaction is to flight rather than fight. And that's a part of what we do as fighters, is that we're developing the fight part of the fight or flight response. That natural reaction to flight has led to an opportunity for me to take his leg and not lose an advantage at that point. So, important one there. Now let's just skip forward to when we are on our knees. And let's just play this through at 25% speed. Let's see if I can speed it up and get in a bit closer. Coming in. All right, here's the approach. So, great shot. Throws a shot to make me do something, but he hasn't. Okay, great idea to throw a shot, but let's look at the shot. The shot is straight up and down. Straight up and down. I don't have to move anything to block that. Just in case it's going to whip over the top, I'll dip my head back a little bit. But the reality is that shot has won him no advantage. In fact, it's created a disadvantage for him if I wanted to press in at that point. But he's done an approach which has caused me to back out. So let's go forward again. So he's retreated the sword. He's crawled forward. I was a bit unsure what he's doing, so I've done that. But you'll note I haven't even fully taken that step back. I've gone, oh, okay, there's nothing happening here, and I've reset back in. Very comfortable in my positioning here. Just at 25, realized that my shield was in a position where he could have just slipped straight down the edge, so I've reset it back to get that front corner up. Seen an opportunity down the inside of his shield. I'm not really concerned about landing it at this point. I really was just trying to make him aware that there's a gap there and in a way just force a reaction. I didn't expect to land the shot. You can see there's a little bit of a lean with it, but there's not heaps. Now the thrust, I will often do something that makes my opponent cover their head. So often it will be either a thrust like that, if that particular line, that just is the shot that lent itself the most. But more often when I'm coming in, I will throw a shot to the offside head directly towards the sword, hoping to go into that top quadrant of the head. And the reason behind that is purely suppression of the weapon so that I can close range. Because even when people are on their knees, their arm range is greater than mine because I'm short. And so I need to have some opportunity, and that creates an opportunity for me to close in and get closer into a range that I can fight better at. So this was just coming out of that thrust, and the opportunity was there to just keep leaning forward and throw this thrust. If it lands, great. Not a big deal because this is my opportunity to close. So I've closed in. My shield has come, and you can see I've caught the corner of his shield kind of down the center of mine. So I've got really good control of his shield here and pretty good coverage. My hand is nice and high, so I can block left or right with the sword if I have to. I've got the tip down here. I can pull this down. If I decided to throw, he could have thrown a leg shot here, and I'd probably actually be quite difficult to block that because of I'm suppressing his shield at the moment, so mine's not going to be able to slide down very well. But so there would have been an opportunity there for him. In fact, he drops the sword to come down. I've dropped the shield down, so there's a bit of contact there. I've gone the offside, and then just pushing that shield up and away to clear his sword. And you can see that what's happened is he's twisted his whole body forward and he's thrown this shot that really didn't serve him at all. So let's have a look at that shot again. The offside, not so bad, but then he rolls over into a thrust that there's no way that that was ever going to land. I already had contact with the sword on the shield, and that was just a poor choice of shot. That was, I would say, a habitual shot that he needs to get out of the psyche in that moment, because what would have, I know what my natural reaction in that moment is. I'm going to throw that shot. My hand automatically drops to here to cover the offside head. So that's something that Ianto needs to build in, which we've actually talked a bit about, is getting this head defense happening with his sword a little bit more. But that shot needed him to drop to here so that he could see what was happening in the fight and then make a decision about whether he rolled out to a snap or whipped and tried to come back on an offside. And so really that snap that he threw and then rolls this into a thrust, that's kept his whole body twisted in a position that has just really given me the advantage over the soft part of his hida here. The top of this hida has, that's the weakest part of that shield on the top edge, and just allowed me to come right over that spot, right in the dead center of the flat of the top of his shield. And you can see my shield is nice and high. I would say that I'm probably a little bit overblocked there, but not greatly, because I want to really make sure I'm covering my head. I don't care if I lose the leg, but the reality is it's probably a bit high, and I could have dropped it a little bit further just to cover the body a little bit better, because there is an opportunity down there that he could have dropped that in underneath that edge of the shield. You can see the line of that shield there, and taken the body. So definitely an opportunity for me to fix that. But that was really ultimately what killed him, is just that poor shot selection and not being patient enough to wait for the opportunity. And that just meant that he threw a shot that was completely ineffectual and didn't serve him at all. So two big takeaways from this, I would say. The biggest takeaways from this today are: be conscious of how often you're retreating from a moment, and play in training, even if it gets you killed for the first dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen times. Play a game where you come in and hold your ground and keep your range, so that you're not coming in and retreating. Come in, fight at that range, 3, 4, 5 shots, moving around your opponent, but keeping at that range to build in that resilience to staying in the moment. And you might be surprised at the opportunities that expose themselves. And being conscious of just watching the fight and being a little bit more patient, so that you can pick the right shot at the right time, rather than just throwing shots for the sake of throwing shots that have absolutely no effect on your opponent. So we saw 2 shots there. That very first opening shot, when he was on his feet, throwing that first shot towards me that was straight up and down, pointless, because it didn't move me. Sort of moved me back, but it wasn't going to move me to a position that he could take advantage of. So what is that shot doing to move your opponent to give you an advantage? If you're throwing it directly into something that I don't have to really move to block, it's not giving you an advantage. It's a bit of a wasted shot. Throwing it down the side where I have to shift here, well, you've just created an advantage on that side. Throwing it down this side, you're shifting here, moving the sword here. You've just engaged my sword into a defensive motion, which is just a timing bait that could help you get a second shot off, where I have to reset out of that to try and block. So just be conscious of that. So there's 2 things there today. So playing in that closer range, not retreating consistently as a habit, and also just being a little bit more aware and patient in the fight to cover yourself and be defensive, and be able to have that opportunity to choose your shot. So you'll notice in those final moments, I was quite defensive. I saw the gap and was able to throw for it. So that's it. Hope that was of use to you, and we'll see you on the next one.